everyone. This is Jeff Culhane, voice of the Florida State Seminoles, and you're listening to the Phillip Jordan Show podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Phillip Jordan Podcast. I am Phillip Jordan. You can check me out over at Auburn Wire, talking all things Auburn football, basketball, baseball. We got you covered, all that good stuff. And video board operator for Dothan United Dragons. And I've got a fun show planned for you guys this week on the show. Kyle Sutherland from Hog Beat, where he's the publisher over there, which are part of On3 and Rivals. We will be talking and previewing the Arkansas Razorbacks football team coming up this season. We're at that point. We're in the summer. It is getting closer to football season, and we're going to start previewing some teams, getting you ready for that. And also, we'll talk a little Arkansas basketball as well, on how John Calipari has kind of rebuilt and restructured the team after losing his top three leading scorers from last season's team. But before we do all of that, let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. Find me on social media at P Jordan Sports. Find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. And please, if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. You also check out the show over at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on the video, and I'll read that on a future edition as well. You can always email me at philipjordanmedia@gmail.com. Now let's jump into it. Let's talk Arkansas Razorbacks football and basketball with Kyle Sutherland, publisher over at hogbeat.com, part of On3 and Rivals. Everybody joining me on the show today, this week, we're going to talk Arkansas Razorbacks, a lot of football, a little basketball. Kyle Sutherland, you can check him out, publisher over at the Hog Beat, which is part of On3 and Rivals. And Kyle, appreciate you coming on the show, talk all things Arkansas.
Absolutely, Phil. Been a long time. I know we've done a few podcasts here over the years, and great to catch up with you tonight.
Yeah, it's been a bit. I see, get Kyle on the show to talk all things Arkansas, looking at these SEC teams, and we're joking off the air when you kind of I'm over at Auburn Wire. When you jump into somebody else's team, you just got to go through and kind of recap in your mind who's there, who's not there, and what's the vibe right now, probably around this Arkansas football program.
Well, you had me on at a really good time because as we record here on a Thursday evening, earlier today, so on Wednesday of this week, we found out that the naming rights, Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, that expired. It was almost 2 years ago I think it was July 1st of 2024. So they've kept the name up and everything just because the Reynolds family has been so great to them and all those different things. But as of Wednesday, I guess it was. I'm getting my days mixed up. Community America out of Kansas City, which they've got location, that's a credit union. They've got locations in Northwest Arkansas and some of the surrounding states. They bought the naming rights starting in 2027. So 2026, nothing will change. So I say all that to say that people were excited. Okay, well, at first they weren't excited. They're like, why are we getting somebody out of state? Nobody's heard of them. Like, what's the big deal here? Well, then it was reported by Whole Hog Sports on Thursday afternoon that the deal is 13 years. We knew it was 13 years. We just didn't know what the number was financially. Apparently, per the report from Whole Hog Sports, it's 13 years, $70 million, so around 5.4 per year. So as it stands, if that is correct, that is, from what we've all been looking at, that is the biggest naming rights in college football history. So to answer your question, it's a long-winded way of answering your question. It's been a little bit of let's prove it to me, and it still is as far as Ryan Silverfield and the football team is concerned. But this is one of those steps in the right direction of giving the fan base some belief. Okay, we're going to get some money raised. Like, it's not just going to be the same as it once was. They really took a step forward in March when they did the Tyson chicken label, and that was a big deal that was announced. So between that and between the Community America deal, I think as far as the financial standpoint, especially, that fans are starting to feel a little bit easier. And again, like I said a second ago, as far as the football team, you still got to go out and produce on the field. I feel like that we're probably not going to know that as far as just the climate, or at least if the climate will change until they play Utah on September 12th, and you've got a chance to get a big road victory there. So overall, I think most people feel like, at least most reasonable people feel like, that Ryan Silverfield and his staff have done what they can do, considering all they have to sell right now is a dream. But it's just at this point, when you've had 3 0-8 seasons in the SEC, it's prove it to me. And that's what they have to do.
Yeah, it was just wild during the Sam Pittman era. It was like up and down. Like you'd have a losing season, winning season, losing season, winning season. What at the end of the day was kind of like the downfall of the Sam Pittman era at Arkansas?
I think the biggest thing was lack of funding, because you saw what they did that first year. He came in, took over the program was in the worst position it had been under Chad Morris. He comes in, of course, had that COVID year, went 3-7 against an all SEC schedule and played very competitively in some of those games. Then 2021, you had your best season since then, but up to that point, it had been the Petrino years since they had won that many games, 9 including the bowl. So I think that he came in, and they had some good coaches on staff, but then when NIL hit, that's when things started to go downhill. And a big part of it was, I think, that they just didn't have a lot of it. I think was they didn't have the funding. There was I'm not so sure that the culture was great as far as discipline and all. I just have no reason to believe it was as strong as it should have been. But I think that really, in a lot of cases, they got outbid. You think about some of the guys that transferred out and went other places. A big part of that was reportedly because they got more money. So I think ultimately what it all came down to was the lack of NIL, and that's what they're really trying to make a push towards right now.
And I'm going to tell you, and I felt justified. I hate to see any coach get fired, but I said as soon as Bob Petrino became the offensive coordinator for that program, I said that man will be the interim head coach at some point, because he could not be trusted. So and then of course did not win a game as the interim coach for him last year. Just what was kind of like your viewpoint on the whole Sam Pittman, Bobby Petrino partnership?
I'm with you as well. I think it was more just one of those where I'm not sure that Pittman hated it, but I don't think he necessarily liked it. It was just one of those like, well, at that particular, because they were coming off of a 4-8 season. So I think that pretty much the thinking was, well, let's bring Petrino in. Yes, it was this long ago when he was here, but that will at least buy some patience with the fan base, especially since the year before in 22, they went 7 and say they had dipped from the 9 wins in 21. But I think that was probably the biggest thing, was that they felt like, okay, they can buy some time within the fan base. People love Bobby Petrino because of what he did. Motorcycle aside, he won ball games, won 21 in 2 years. That has not happened since. So I think that there was a lot of excitement. And then when he took over, you did see, particularly the first few games, you saw an uptick as far as just a lot more effort. The offense was doing some great things, and there was one of the best offenses in the country. They just kept turning the freaking ball over, and at the most inopportune times. And that's why I say, yeah, I know they were 2-10. This was not a bad football team last year. They were just one of the most undisciplined in history to me. I mean, just thinking about how many times they gave the football away. So when he first took over, it was like, okay, well, maybe they'll at least make a push. Nobody expected like a bowl type season, but at least maybe the team will look a little bit better. And it did for a bit. But then at the end, when they knew that like he wasn't going to be the guy, I think it was just one of those where you just had to clean house and you had to get somebody else new in there. And we knew pretty much from the get-go that was probably going to be the case. But Ryan Silverfield and I think his staff they've come in and they've scored some nice recruits. They're still pretty low there as far as the On3 and Rivals rankings. I think they're 13th in the SEC out of 16. They're used to be in 15th or 16th, so a little bit of a boost. But it is a little bit of a breath of fresh air, just seeing what they're doing and seeing the way that the guys have seemingly bought in. So we'll see if it translates over the field here and come August and September.
Yeah, because apparently all the SEC teams that had openings, they all went to the American Conference to find their new coaches after this last season. And talking about Ryan Silverfield, 7 years at Memphis, 50 wins there, had 2 10-win seasons, never had a bad year, one of the better offenses there. You kind of talked on, a little bit on what he has done, but, other things with him. What has really stood out with you and with your impressions of Ryan Silverfield so far?
Well, I think when a coach comes in, they're obviously going to say a lot of what we call coach speak, and they're going to say a lot of the same things that you hear from other places. But one thing I've done is in interviews, I've listened to what the players are saying. Obviously, the players are going to talk about the culture and this, but many of them have straight up said some of the ones that are returning have talked about, like, it just seems like that there's better team chemistry with both sides of the football, even on special teams as well. It just seems like the building is happier. One of the first, and Ryan talked about this, one of the first things he did is when he walked to the meeting room, he talked about how they needed to turn the lights on. And they're like, well, coach, the lights are on full blast right now. He's like, man, it's so dark and dreary in here. So just little things like that, like making the lights brighter, so it's a little bit more enticing in there. Teaching the guys how to stretch differently. Like, he noticed some things like the way that they were walking around, the way they were stretching, just down to the little things. And I really like the fact that he's coached every level of football. He's been at Division III, I think, maybe not Division II, but high school, the NFL for a long period of time, where he coached a few former Razorbacks. And so he's seen it at every single level. And then he did have that success as a head coach at Memphis. And so I think that's one of the things that some people are still looking at it as coach speak, but then I look at just some of the things that he says, and then I hear that come out of the players, and it really just sounds pretty genuine as well. So it does really seem he has the slogan all in, and it really does appear like these guys, especially at least from the ones that we've heard from, have really bought into what they are doing.
Yeah, and 42 players coming in, not counting the high school players, a lot of new players, but you got some coming from Memphis with them. 7 players, his offensive coordinator coming from Memphis with them. And now when we look at what Curt Cignetti did at Indiana and how that can work when you bring familiar people, yes, it's mixing in with the new guys and kind of getting everything working. But that's also, I think a formula a lot of new coaches are going to be looking at. Hey, I bring a lot of my guys with me in year one. I think it really helps the players get accustomed to what the coach is going to do, because you have players on the roster that kind of like know what the standard and expectation is going to be.
Oh, yeah, no question. Especially, you've got a quarterback. You've got AJ Hill in there that didn't play a ton last year, but still has the – and then you've also – my kids in the background. But you got AJ Hill that doesn't have all the experience in the world, but does, at least know the playbook. You've got Sutton Smith that was an electrifying running back that I think is going to do some great things in the SEC. You got Jamari Hawkins, too, a receiver that knows it. Malachi, I mean, you can just go up and down this list of guys who have, especially on the offensive side. Did get a few defensive guys, like I think 1 or 2, but mostly at every level, even tight end, Matt Adcock. You've got somebody there at every single level that's really going to help these guys. And so you're exactly right. I mean, having at least one person particularly, I mean, it helps anytime you get 1 or 2, but if you get one person at least at every single position, that's going to help them grasp it even quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Trust me. Seeing it covered in Auburn, seeing what all the stuff with Goldless and South Florida, pretty much all the I've been joking, they're the Auburn Bulls going into next year. But anyways, quarterback. KJ Jackson, he got a little bit of experience last year. You mentioned AJ Hill there. Jackson had a lot of playing time against Texas and against Missouri. So this is a guy who has played in the SEC. Do you view him as the favorite for this job?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's definitely down to him and AJ, and that's kind of been the consensus really since they both came on campus, even before spring practice. And that's kind of what everybody feels, is that KJ just he's familiar with art. Yeah, I mean, I know this is a different staff and everything, but he's so familiar with the state of Arkansas. He's so familiar with the campus. So he's got that comfortability factor there, but the guy's just a competitor. He roots for the guys that he's competing against, and ultimately that just sharpens, iron sharpens iron, as they say. But I do think that even though he doesn't have a ton of experience, just like AJ Hill, he does have that SEC experience, as you said, against Texas and against Missouri, and then a little bit in mop-up duty here and there. So he will definitely, to me, be the favorite coming in. It would be shocking to me if against North Alabama on opening day that he's not the starter there, but it is definitely down to him and AJ Hill.
Look, and Arkansas has had success with quarterbacks with those initials. So
that's right. Yep, that is right. Exactly. Hopefully it will translate, because, right now all those lists are starting to come out, and he is, I think, at best 15th or 14th right now. So I know he's probably putting those in his locker as bulletin board material.
Yeah, them lists to get you. A couple years ago, I made one, and I didn't put KJ Jefferson in the top 5, and the internet lit me a new one on that one when I did that. So I know how those lists go. So, but around the quarterback though, Braylon Russell, a talented running back. I know they lost 1,000-yard running back last year. They've got some experienced offensive linemen. Look like they got some depth at receiver. So the around the quarterback should be pretty good to whoever is the guy to have success.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I think the offense has a chance to be really good. Like last, hopefully this year they can not be 123rd out of 136 in turnover margin. And that's the thing. That's the biggest deal. And I noticed a lot of those spring practices that I went to, they were really focusing on like every single drill. It seemed like they were focusing on ball security. So that was really encouraging to see. But the offensive line returns 3 of the 5 starters from last year. Probably the biggest question mark is going to be Kavion Broussard, who will likely be the starting left tackle. Seen some good things, but very inconsistent. And then over at right tackle, you get Bryant Williams, who graded out extremely well at Louisiana. He's in his senior year, so his final college season. But Caden Kittler back at center, Kobe Branham likely back at right guard, and then you'll probably have Malachi Breland from Memphis at left guard. But then receiver is a little bit of a question mark. But Chris Marshall, if he would have kept things clean off the field, he might be in the NFL right now. That's been his thing, was just struggles off the field. But he is an ultra talented young man. Hopefully he can really pull some things together and get it going in the SEC. If he does, he can be certainly a number 1 wide receiver for the Hogs there. CJ Brown, just from right up the road in Bentonville, he did some good things last year. I think that he can take that next step. And then guys like Courtney Crutchfield as well, that you really look to take that next step, who actually went to Memphis as a really highly regarded player and just hasn't really gotten it together in college yet. So Ismail Cisse, he got injured in fall camp last year. So they expect big things out of him. And as you talked about in the back to the backfield, Braylon Russell. Braylon I've covered since 9th grade. He's from Arkansas, not too terribly far from where I'm from. I've covered him since he was in 9th grade. Braylon looks and sounds about as good, like looks physically and sounds as confidently as any time I have seen him since he was a freshman. He was always a bigger back in high school. I'll just kind of say a little on the pudgier side. Still was fast. Still was really, really good. Came to Arkansas way overweight. They told him to drop some, and ever since then he's the biggest thing is he's got to stay healthy for a full season. He had a really bad spring practice in spring of 2025, I guess it was, and then did average 5.5 yards or 5.2 yards per carry last year. But I do think that's one of the things that I'm going to be writing about this summer is I think Braylon's going to have a breakout season. This is probably the first time I'm saying it on the record, but I think and breakout meaning like 500-600 yards, 7-8 touchdowns. I think with what Sutton Smith can do, if Braylon does that, you're going to be in really good position. So all that to say, I didn't even talk about the tight ends, Matt Adcock and some of those guys, especially, and then Jaden Platt, that name was slipping my memory. Jaden Platt, I think, is going to have a really good year. He played a lot. He played a pretty big part in the offense last season, and he's going to step up and be one of those guys that they're going to count on. So I think the offense can really, really make some noise. Maybe not top 5 in the SEC like they were last year. I can't remember if they finished there, but somewhere like 5 or 6. But they have a chance to really make some noise and probably be the strength of the team.
Flip over defense, which obviously was not the strength of this team last year. Ranked last in the SEC, only forced 9 turnovers. And when you're in the SEC conference, you got to force turnovers because it's hard to stop teams if you're not doing that. But defense coordinator bringing in Ron Roberts, a guy that has experience at Auburn and Florida. And I thought his one year at Auburn when he was there with Hugh Freeze, I thought he did that defense really overachieved. He got the most out of that group that year, before they bring in DJ Durkin and all that. And he, did well. Florida, not a lot of guys returning on this side, but you do have defensive end Quincy Rhodes, 8 sacks last year, SEC second team, linebacker Bradley Shaw, a guy in 7 starts, had like 50 tackles. So obviously he's got a lot of potential. Reshuffled the secondary. Looks like everybody from the secondary is from somewhere else. They didn't start at Arkansas, but what's your kind of read on kind of how the defense could be this year?
Yeah, you said it. I mean, it's really Quincy Rhodes Jr., and it was building around him. I mean, you had like linebackers Bradley Shaw, Wyatt Simmons returning, who played limited action last year. And Wyatt Simmons, look, his dad, Paul Simmons, head coach at Division II Harding University, won the national championship in 23, went there last year, lost to Ferris State. So Wyatt Simmons is a football guy, knows it, extremely smart. and he really picked up last year. I think between him and Bradley Shaw, you're going to see some good things at linebacker. Jaquavian Smith, who they brought in from the FCS ranks, and Howard, really have a lot of hope for him. But then when you look at the defensive line, talking about Quincy Rhodes, I think what you add, because as you know, Ron Roberts likes that jack position, defensive end, like linebacker hybrid type. On the opposite side of him, Jamonta Waller, who signed with Auburn and just really never, who Roberts recruited, and then he ended up coming to Auburn. I guess he never played for Roberts there, but Jamonta came in as an outstanding talent. Just that foot injury kept him slowed. He got buried on the depth chart. I think that he could do some really big things there. Charlie Collins can do some big things at the jack. Inside, David Oakey was a guy that was on Arkansas's roster last year, but hardly ever saw the field because he was so banged up and just not quite sure his head was there mentally. I think that he has really improved both mentally and physically. Then, on the defensive line too, you think about guys like Carlin Jones. I've got my list here because like you said, I got some of these guys in my head, but I don't want to miss them. Steven Souls also there on the edge that came from Kentucky. So I think that front seven with what they're building around Quincy Rhodes Jr., I feel like can really create some havoc, especially since they feel like they've got some depth. But defensive back, the secondary, talking about how bad the defense was, the secondary especially just couldn't have been much worse. And really all you have coming back there is Miguel Mitchell, which it's time. And I've wrote about this a few times. I wrote about this back during spring practice. Like, he's got to get it going. He's been at 2 SEC schools. It's never really fully clicked. He was like the third on the team in missed tackles last year. So he's got to be that veteran guy that really gets it going. Because honestly, probably that group as a collective whole was probably the best transfer portal haul that they got, in my opinion. We think about Jaheim, which they call him Joker Johnson from Tulane. You got Lakai Leonard Lakai Rowland from Maryland. Some of those guys like that. There's a few other, Christian Harrison, Rodney Harrison's son, so you got guys like that have a lot of experience, and another thing, depth. That's one of the things that Darren Wilson, the secondary coach, has talked about. He wants all of these guys to be 4-dimensional players. He wants them to know all of the roles on the secondary, not just the corners knowing what the corners are doing. He wants them to know what the secondary or what the safeties are doing and the star position. So I really like what they did bring in. Like I said, it can't get much worse than what it was last year, but I think this could be a very, very well improved group under Roberts.
So what I always like to do when I do these previews for any season is look at the schedule. And of course, open with North Alabama, should go win. That's going to be interesting going out to Utah. And new head coach, new coaching staff for them as well with what they've got going on. I will say, just as a SEC football fan, I am so happy to see at the end of the schedule LSU, because that is where it should be. That should be a Friday game. I will say that. They should play that game on the day after Thanksgiving, but I'm not going to be ask too much out of the SEC on that. But when I saw that, I was super happy. When you look at this schedule, what's kind of like your thoughts on where Arkansas could end up at the end of the season?
Well, the biggest thing for me, and I love how you said that. I think that, I don't know how I remember this. I think we talked about that the last time we were on a podcast about how that game
Every time I talk to somebody that covers Arkansas or LSU with these previews and I talk about the schedule, I mentioned that, and I continue. I think the SEC office just finally started listening to this podcast.
They probably did.
We have to do it. We have to do it.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I wish it would have been Friday as well, but hey, we at least have it on Thanksgiving weekend. But that's, like I was saying earlier, I think that September 12th game at Utah, that's going to be a really big measuring stick of where this team is. So if you at least go over there and you take him to the wire and you lose it, it's going to suck, but at least you're like, okay, this team is very competitive. And I know that will also, maybe the fan base won't particularly like that, but just because that's what they're used to is close games and finishing with a loss. But you think about those first 4 games, North Alabama, Utah, Georgia, of course, at Arkansas, and then Tulsa, you feel like you're going to come out of that 3-1. Now, I'm interested to see how many times that clip of Ryan Silverfield taking a shot at Georgia. I don't know if you saw that last year, but Ryan Silverfield took just a random shot at Georgia, talking about how their players are not like Georgia's that go 90 miles an hour and all these different things. So I'm sure that clip is going to be played a lot around their locker room, but nonetheless, I mean, Georgia is Georgia and Arkansas is Arkansas. But then at A&M, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Missouri, I look at that 4-game stretch and just what we know right now. I mean, what is Vanderbilt going to be like post Pavia? Like, I feel like they're still going to be good. They're still going to be disciplined, but what will they be like after that? Missouri, like A&M, obviously going to be pretty good again. Like Tennessee, what is Tennessee going to be? What do we really know about them? Missouri, feel like they'll probably be pretty good again, but regardless of what they always have Arkansas's number. Maybe it favors Arkansas not playing them at the end of the year this time around. We'll see. And then Auburn, South Carolina, Texas, and LSU. I mean, that could be maybe the toughest stretch of the season, depending on because look, South Carolina, Shane Beamer, it's do or die. I mean, he might not make it through the season if they get off to a really struggling start. So, South Carolina's got their backs up against the wall this year. Goalish year one at Auburn remains, but between Texas and LSU at the end there, I feel like that 4-game stretch might be the toughest, just at least what we know here on the eve of July. So it's real, especially if you lose that Utah game. It's hard for me to imagine that, because it's hard for me to find 6 wins on this schedule in general, Phillip. So if they lose that game, I'm saying no bowl. 2 games in probably. If they win that game, then and they come out of the first 4 games 3-1, who knows what could happen. But all in all, it's really just, when you look at it from North Alabama all the way to LSU, all the way through LSU, it's another brutal schedule, just another year in the SEC.
Look, and I'll say this, maybe the Texas game's a trap game, because maybe Texas will be looking ahead to A&M, because I'm sure that's going to be a big one with those two, because A&M is going to be a really good team as well. Just just kind of find some opportunities in there where maybe there's some trap situations. And look, I'm the same thing with Vanderbilt. I want to see how they are without Pavia. I mean, I know with that whole deal, everybody said, well, that'd be a good coach for Auburn. And I was like, in other jobs, I'm like, well, can he win without Pavia? That's my whole question, because what's his record before him and what's his record with him? It's kind of.
Yeah. I think his first year he won like 6 or 7, then they took a dip, and then Pavia comes in and they did what they. So, yeah, I mean, you applaud what they have done there, but that's going to be the big test. What are they going to do post Diego?
Now, real quickly before I let you go, a few minutes of basketball talk, then I'll get you on out of here. Darius Acuff going number 7 to Sacramento during the first round of the NBA draft. Acuff's a guy that could fill it up. I saw something today. Calipari did an interview on him and asked about his defense. He basically said, I don't care what he plays on defense. He can just,
because he scored so much. Yeah. And that's how it was. Yeah. I mean, I think he was so good offensively. I mean, there were so many games, Phillip, that you're watching, and like even into the second half, he's like 6, 7 points, 6, 7. Yeah, for all the kids, 6, 7, 8 points, and then there's like 5 minutes left in the game, and then he's around 20 or over 20. That's just what he is the definition of a silent assassin to me. Darius is not a very loud kid. I mean, he's all business. You saw the other night when they were putting the video during the pre-draft, and all the guys are doing their little hand signals or whatever. Darius just sitting there stone. That's what he is. He's a great dude, super nice, but he's just all business. That's just what he does. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that the Nets I'm not a huge NBA guy, admittedly. I follow, the Arkansas guys and kids that are like, when Chris Moore was with Auburn, followed him because he's an Arkansas kid type stuff. But even though Chris didn't go to the NBA, but I think that it's one of those where the Nets are probably going to regret not taking him. It was really cool to see back-to-back picks with Malik Thomas and Trevin Brazile going 34 and 35. But yeah, Darius, I think, is just going to absolutely kill it in the NBA if they give him a chance. I mean, what I mean by giving him a chance, obviously he's going to get his chance to play, but if they build around him appropriately, I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't know what their situation is right now. I couldn't tell you where they would be in the standings at the end of the season. I'm just not an NBA guy. It's not my thing. But I will tell you, if they give him the tools that he needs and just put what needs to be around him, it's going to be a great career for him. I would not. I know I'm biased. It wouldn't shock me if he has the greatest career of anybody in this draft class, just because I know his work ethic. I know what the guy plays hurt. That's what he's going to play unless he just cannot walk or cannot move. So he's going to have a big career in the NBA, no question.
Yeah, that was another thing, just kind of leading up to the draft, because there's so many Calipari, interviews on different shows, and he talked about that. Like, I think he told him he needed to take maybe a game off, and he didn't want anything to do with that.
So he came in a boot. I forget why. I should know it by now because it's been talked about so much. I think it was around. It was one of the like the last 5 regular season games. Came in Cal's office in a boot, and he said, "Look, we're going to sit you." And he's like, "No, screw that. No, I'm not." Now they did sit him against Missouri in the regular season finale, just because they knew they had the double bye in the SEC term. They still won that game too. I think actually, I think that was the one where Malik Thomas actually took over. But they kind of knew that that was going to be one of those. Yeah, they won 88-84 in overtime prior to the SEC tournament, but they knew that what their seed was going to be. So they're like, what's the point? We're playing for a national champ. Like, we're playing to try to win a national championship. So other than that, there were games where his ankle, for really, I would say maybe pretty much the back half of the season, at least the back half of the regular season, Darius's ankle was hurting him, and he played, and he obviously played really, really well to win SEC Player and Freshman of the Year.
So, looking at where the team is now when they get, roll around rebuilding the roster, because you lose your 3 leading scorers, Acuff, obviously, Malik Thomas, Trevon Brazile, as you mentioned, all them guys got drafted. Billy Richmond is your leading scorer returning. And, but Calipari knows how to build these rosters. He's went through the high school ranks, got a bunch of 5 stars coming in. And also, Jeremiah Wilkinson coming from Georgia, 17.4 points per game for them. This is the guy that can put some points up. So obviously there's going to be some gelling of the team that's going to have to take place, but everybody has to deal with this college basketball now. Everybody's got a new roster, but just kind of like how Calipari has kind of done to kind of put together a new look roster when basketball season rolls around.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to be the front court, right? That's the biggest question because, it didn't get really that dominant guy, but you think about like Mika Murinen, the international that they really like a lot. He's been getting a lot of hype lately. But as far as like the backcourt, Jeremiah Wilkinson, I actually drove. I didn't really have much to do last season, whenever, I guess it was in like February when Arkansas played at Georgia. So I drove to Athens. It was like 9 hours. I'm like, never been here. Why not? So I went to the game and saw what Jeremiah dropped 20. And that's just kind of like another day at the office for him, and great scorer. So you really like him as pretty much that Malik Thomas replacement. But getting Billy back was massive, just because he's the hardest to me. He's the hardest playing player in the entire country. But then the last half of the season, he really developed his jump shot. So now that jump shot is a threat, the driving is even easier for him, because now that's not all he has. Before, pretty much you knew that he was going to drive the lane and just come at you with authority trying to get a bucket. But now that he can hit a jumper really well, and that's become dangerous, that just elevates his. Now he's going to have an entire offseason too to continue developing other parts of his game. So that was huge. But Jordan Smith Jr. coming in like top to bottom, this is the most talented as far as on paper. This is the most talented class coming in for Cal. Like when you look at Abdou Toure, they like him a lot. JJ Andrews, which his dad is a legend, Sean Andrews. I'm not sure know about that. His dad's probably the greatest offensive lineman that's ever come through Arkansas, played in the NFL for a little bit, was a first-round draft pick. And JJ has looked like a grown man since he was a freshman. I've covered him since he was in like 8th grade. And I think that JJ is going to come in, play that 3 spot and get some significant playing time there. But when you look, Jordan Smith is the one that all eyes are on, the 5-star prospect, pretty much top 3 to 5 player, regardless of what rankings you look at. The biggest thing about him, and I'd imagine this is what the staff is going to tell him, the biggest thing about him is you just have to come in and be Jordan Smith Jr. People are going to naturally compare you to Darius Acuff just because that's just like he was the big-time 5-star coming in last year. Now you're the big-time 5-star. But that's just unrealistic, because what Darius did was historical. It's never been done before, especially some of the, like what I saw a stat where I can't remember exactly what it was, but him and Pete Maravich were the only players, at least in the SEC, to have, I think it was maybe leading the SEC in points and assists. That's what it was. So that kind of on top of all the other things that Darius did. So Jordan Smith Jr. just has to come in and be Jordan Smith Jr. Nobody else. And the rest will take care of itself. I think fans would be foolish, and most fans know this. You'd be foolish to expect any kind of season like what we saw out of Darius Acuff, but if they can get a little bit of a fraction of that, I think that it's going to ultimately equal wins, and it's going to be a very happy fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my final question before I let you go. I kept you over 30 minutes, so
you're good.
This is going to be it. I know Arkansas is a football school. That football is number one. But how close is football and basketball like? If y'all have Kentucky is a basketball school, and we have these schools in the SEC now that are kind of both football, basketball. Auburn's really become a football and a basketball school. How close are those like in alignment with each other, or just how close is with the fandom with football and basketball, stuff like that?
Well, right now, I'd say that basketball heavily outweighs, just because of like coming off a 2-10 season, and overall football in recent memory hasn't been that great, minus 2021. And then you have a celebrity as your coach that gets pretty much whatever recruit he wants. Mm-hmm. So I think, and then also, of course, playing all these huge non-conference matchups, like they're playing Michigan State they had a lot of those last year. They're going to have a lot of them this year, playing North Carolina in the SEC ACC challenge, and then Michigan State on Thanksgiving Day, all those things. So right now, basketball by a mile. But whenever things are really good, that's the thing. Basketball and football at Arkansas has never really been good at the same time. Like Pittman, I guess Pittman, that non-win season. Well, I guess I take that back. I guess really the closest would be Pittman's first couple of years, and then Musselman under that, when Musselman took him to the Elite Eight. So I take that back. I guess it has been for maybe about a year or two. It's been about 8, but really, once Arkansas made its first Sweet 16 under Musselman in 2021, first Sweet 16 since 1995, at least 1996, that's when I feel like the shift happened in basketball a little bit, just because football started to go downhill. And then when Cal came in, it's just been pretty much basketball, and that's everybody's kind of go-to right now.
Yeah, he has one of my favorite quotes when he got introduced. He goes, "I talked to the team. There is no team."
There is no team. Yeah, that one, and the Nails, when they talked about whenever they started 0-5 in SEC play his first year, and then they make that big run, and then he said, "Everybody put us in the coffin. They just forgot the Nails." So that one, and what you just said, I talked to the team. That's probably up there as well. But he's a hoot, man. He's a hoot in press conferences. There's always going to be a story or two out of it every single time.
Yeah, I always enjoy, and I always like hearing him talk about the state of the sport too. Like, he's very insightful, and he kind of reminds me of Saban to a little bit. Like, he cares about it. He has things that he thinks should be better, but he does a great job of that stuff as well. Like, I really feel like he's a guy whenever he decides to retire, he could really help the sport grow even more. Which I think I will say this with college basketball, with NIL and the portal, I think it's made college basketball much better.
It has. It's made it more, as far as the parity and all that. Oh, there's no question. Yeah, and I think really what everybody's just trying, like everybody kind of agrees at this point, even the ones that were against like players getting paid. I think most agree that it's like they need to make money, they deserve it, but it's really just like there has to be policing. That's really where everybody's like, that kind of feels like it's like the political thing where like most people tell you, like, I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican, I'm right down the middle. I kind of feel like that's in a way like this. It's just basically, look, we just want policing. We don't care if the players make money, like whatever. There just has to be some sort of policing to where you can't, I guess like recruiting, there's always been dirty things and all that, but it's just like, what the Clemson and Ole Miss type situation, like just there has to be something that really protects the sport. And also too, 26-year-olds playing, like, that's just, unless you've had like 2 or 3 injuries, to me, that, which I know that recently kind of didn't really get itself taken care of, but the 5-for-5 thing, that's a whole other conversation in itself. But yeah, that's ultimately where it's at, Phillip, is just policing really more than anything.
Yeah, and I'm agree with that. I think that's kind of, we can get that taken care of, make the sport, both football, basketball, all sports, so much better.
Yeah.
But anyways, Kyle, it's been a lot of fun talking all things Arkansas with you. I love football, basketball, a little grand scheme of things too as well. But if the listeners and viewers want to follow you online, where can they find you and check out Hog Beat?
Yeah, as you see there on the screen, hogbeat.com, we've got right now, we finished up on the recruiting stuff mainly for football since it's the dead period now, but our basketball still might add one more. That still remains to be seen, so we're going to keep an eye on that. And then right now, everything else is just kind of finishing up the baseball portal. We've actually gotten a lot of traction on softball portal too. After Arkansas made its first Women's College World Series, we've been doing a good bit of softball stuff, and there's a lot of interest in that. So really just anything that comes during the busy season that is summer is what we're kind of tapping into. But yeah, you can find all that over at hogbeat.com.
All right, go check it out if you want to know all things going on with Arkansas Razorbacks. And Kyle, once again, appreciate the time, and I look forward when we can get to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely, Phillip. Anytime, man. Always great catching up.
Everybody, and once again, thanks to Kyle Sutherland for coming on the show. A lot of fun talking with him about all things Arkansas. We jumped into some other topics there as well. And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Stay tuned. More audio content will be coming your way. Remember, you can follow me on social media at P. Jordan Sports. Podcast available, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on the video, and I'll read it on a future edition as well. And you can always email me at phillipjordanmedia@gmail.com. Again, thank you, everybody, for checking out this episode of the show. Until next time,